The United States presidential line of succession is the order in which officials of the United States federal government assume the powers and duties of the office of President of the United States if the incumbent president becomes incapacitated, dies, resigns, or is removed from office. The order of succession specifies that the office passes to the vice president, if the vice presidency is simultaneously vacant, or if the vice president is also incapacitated. The powers and duties of the presidency pass to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, President pro tempore of the Senate, and then cabinet secretaries, depending on eligibility. Presidential succession is referred to multiple times in the U.S. Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 6, as well as the 12th Amendment, 20th Amendment, and 25th Amendment. The Vice President is designated as first in the presidential line of succession by the Article 2 Succession Clause, which also authorizes Congress to provide for a line of succession beyond the Vice President. It has done so on 3 occasions. The current Presidential Succession Act was adopted in 1947, and last revised in 2006. The 25th Amendment also establishes procedures for filling an intra-term vacancy in the office of the Vice President. The Presidential Succession Act refers specifically to officers beyond the Vice President acting as President rather than becoming President when filling a vacancy. The Cabinet currently has 15 members, of which the Secretary of State is first in line. The other Cabinet Secretaries follow in the order of when their departments, or the department of which their department is the successor, were created. Those heads of department who are constitutionally ineligible to be elected to the presidency are disqualified from assuming the powers and duties of the President through succession, and skip to the next in line. Since 1789, the Vice President has succeeded to the presidency intra-term on 9 occasions, 8 times due to the incumbent's death, and once due to resignation. No one lower in the line of succession has ever been called upon to act as president. Widely considered a settled issue during the late 20th century, the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001 demonstrated the potential for a decapitation strike that would kill or incapacitate multiple individuals in the presidential line of succession in addition to many members of Congress and the federal judiciary. In the years immediately following the attacks, numerous wide-ranging discussions were started, in Congress, among academics and within the public policy community about continuity of government concerns including the existing constitutional and statutory provisions governing presidential succession. These discussions remain ongoing. One effort put forward by the Continuity of Government Commission, a nonpartisan think tank, produced 3 reports, 2003, 2009 and 2011, the second of which focused on the implicit ambiguities and limitations in the current Succession Act, and contained recommendations for amending the laws for succession to the presidency. The table below details the current presidential order of succession as established by the 1947 Presidential Succession Statute as amended. 1. The order is determined by the offices. However, the individual in an office must still satisfy the constitutional requirements for the office in order to serve as acting president. 2. In the table, the absence of a number in the first column indicates that the incumbent is ineligible, and an italicized number indicates that the incumbent's eligibility is uncertain. In such cases, a note explains the detail. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5 of the Constitution sets 3 qualifications for holding the presidency. To serve as president, one must be a natural-born citizen of the United States, be at least 35 years old, and be a resident in the United States for at least 14 years. 6c. The presidential line of succession is mentioned in 4 places in the Constitution. The Presidential Succession Act of 1792, full text, provided for succession to the presidency, in the event both the offices of the President and the Vice President were vacant, by, first, the President pro tempore of the Senate, followed by, if need be, the Speaker of the House. 13. Various framers of the Constitution, such as James Madison, criticized the arrangement as being contrary to their intent. The decision to build the line of succession around those 2 officials was made after a long and contentious debate. In addition to the President pro tempore and the Speaker, both the Secretary of State and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court were also suggested. Including the Secretary of State was unacceptable to most Federalists, who did not want the then Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson, who had become the leader of the opposition Democratic Republicans, to follow the Vice President in the succession, and many objected to including the Chief Justice due to separation of powers concerns. 814. The statute provided that the presidential successor would serve in an acting capacity, holding office only until a new president could be elected. 15. A special election was to be held in November of the year in which dual vacancies occurred, unless the vacancies occurred after the first Wednesday in October, in which case the election would occur the following year, or unless the vacancies occurred within the last year of the presidential term, in which case the next election would take place as regularly scheduled. The persons elected president and vice president in such a special election would have served a full 4-year term beginning on March 4 of the next year. No such election ever took place. The Presidential Succession Act of 1886, full text, established a line of succession that included the members of the President's cabinet in the order of the establishment of the various departments, beginning with the Secretary of State, and stipulated that any official discharging the powers and duties of the presidency must possess the constitutional qualifications to hold the office. 15. The President pro tempore and Speaker were excluded from the new line. Also dropped was the provision mandating a special presidential election when a double vacancy arose. The need for increasing the number of presidential successors was abundantly clear to Congress, for twice within the span of 4 years it happened that there was no one in the presidential line of succession. In September 1881, when Chester A. Arthur succeeded to the presidency following James A. Garfield's death, there was no vice president, no president pro tempore of the Senate, and no Speaker of the House of Representatives. 9. Then, in November 1885, Grover Cleveland faced a similar situation, following the death of Vice President Thomas A. Hendricks, as the Senate and the House had not convened yet to elect new officers. 16. The Presidential Succession Act of 1947, full text, restored the Speaker of the House and President pro tempore of the Senate to the line of succession, but in reverse order from their 1792 positions, and placed them ahead of the members of the Cabinet, positioned in the same order as before, in the order of the establishment of their department. 3f. Placing the Speaker and the President pro tempore, both elected officials, back in the succession and placing them ahead of Cabinet members, all of whom are appointed by the President with the advice and consent of the Senate, was Harry S. Truman's idea. Personally conveyed to Congress in June 1945, 2 months after becoming President upon Franklin D. Roosevelt's death, the proposal reflected Truman's belief that the President should not have the power to appoint to office the person who would be my immediate successor in the event of my own death or inability to act, and that the presidency should, whenever possible, be filled by an elective officer. 1517.